All right, you open us up.
Work, 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 work. Da, 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 da. That's the first thing that came to my mind, man, was work, 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 work. Why? Because wisdom takes work. We read Wisdom Takes Work by Ryan Holiday. I'm pumped
that was
about this episode. I'm pumped.
that was the best opening that anybody could have. So, of course, the book that we're reading is Wisdom Takes Work, and we're going to be reading more books. So, if you guys want to follow us on one of our socials to figure out what books we're reading, to read it with us. But I'm super excited that you're super excited about it because I know that I'm going to learn a lot from you. Are there any
Wait,
initial takeaways?
you said that last week. I don't think you learned too much from me last week.
I always learn stuff from you, man. Like you have just a unique perspective on life. And I tend to be very I have tended to be close-minded. It's so funny because in reading this book, like it talks about wisdom, and one of the points that it makes is that wisdom is a lagging indicator. So it's not something where I can say, "Oh, because I just went on a trip to see you," and so it's not like, "Oh, I went to Europe. I was able to see all these really cool sites. I was able to see the Eiffel Tower, and we went to Disney Paris, and I was able to see and interact with the German people. Now look at me, I'm so wise." Right? It's not something where I do it and then immediately I see the result of wisdom, but something that happens whenever I interact with you is I gain a little bit every single time, which is why I'm excited to talk about this book and its impact. This is actually my first time reading this through. I'm sorry, not my first time reading this through. This is my first time reading Ryan Holiday. And you
Mm.
have talked about Ryan Holiday for such a long time. One of the things that I'm curious about is Ryan Holiday is an excellent writer. Like he's very good. He has some really great thoughts. There were definitely some things that we did not like about this book that we're
Right.
going to discuss. But I'm curious what your response is for someone who this is the first Ryan Holiday work that they've ever read versus you. Did you start off with Obstacles the Way, or what was your first Ryan Holiday book? How does this book compare with those?
Yeah, I think the first three books, Obstacle is the Way, Ego is the Enemy, Stillness is the Key.
Right.
I mean, anytime you watch the first movie, like Home Alone, the first one's always better than the second one. The second one's always better than the third one. And
True.
then you get to like the fifth Home Alone movie, and you're like, yeah, you watch half of it and you turn it off. So I think with Ryan Holiday, it's not like that. Like Ryan Holiday writes from such a unique perspective, and that he is not. Hey, nice. So before we go on, Brian, why are we not smoking cigars today? 'Cause I think the
We're not
people want to
smoking
know.
because this is Two
All,
Bros
all,
Lit.
all three people want to know.
I talked to RJ a little bit last night, and I was like, "Yeah, man, you're the third person who's listening to our podcast. This is great."
Yeah,
So it's 32 degrees in Germany right now,
snowing like crazy outside. Yes.
and I'm getting over just a slight cold. Like my voice, I don't know if you can hear it. Can you hear it? My voice is a little bit
Yeah, I
deeper,
can hear it. Yeah.
just a
Well,
little bit.
I thought it was your extra testosterone from your workouts this week. I don't know.
I mean, what can I say, right? I have been doing no. So our goals episode, I've been walking every single morning for the past
Good,
2 weeks.
good.
This morning I walked a little. Been doing 2 miles, rucking 2 miles. I just went up on my weight vest to 40 pounds. So
Whoa.
2 miles with 40-pound weight vest. It takes me 40 minutes. And then this morning I did 1.6 miles. I took a little bit shorter route so that I could get on and talk with you a little bit more.
Right.
But that's the reason we're not smoking cigars.
Yeah.
So yeah,
No, so back to the Ryan Holiday stuff. This is what I
sorry I was
saw
so
about.
rudely cut you
Yeah.
off
No.
with
No
my
worries, man.
coffee cup. My bad.
It's all good. No, it's funny because we were reading this book kind of the same time when you were here in Germany, and
Right,
we
right.
were both like kind of ragging on him. Uh, we were both ragging on him about, oh, we don't like this about what he's saying, or he's kind of a hypocrite in the way he said this, which I'm sure we'll get into. But then I went back and I started taking notes. I started journaling through it. I even wrote a little article on this book, and man, it's become one of my favorite books. You take out a couple of themes that his opinions, and
Interesting.
I came away with like three, like not life-changing themes, but like three themes that I took away from this book. And those three themes were, I think you read through this book, and the three things that you get from each chapter on how to get the wisdom and what kind of work do you need to do to get that wisdom. And I think it comes down to reading. I mean, there are so many references to reading, how to read, what to read. Then he goes in and he starts talking about writing, journaling, not just writing books, but journaling. I know you said something in your own notes about creating the second brain, which is one of the chapters in the book. And then the
Mm-hmm.
one that took me that I am now focusing on way more than I ever have before is the simple act of thinking. Thinking about what you're reading, thinking about what you're writing, and then writing about what you're thinking, and then reading about what you're thinking about to get better, and the whole process of self development. So I took away those three themes, reading, writing, and thinking, as what I took from this book, like how I can
That's
get
really
wisdom
good.
and how that's going to, the work I need to do those three things. So that's, I guess, like the overall thing I took from this book was read, write, and think.
So I think one of the very first things, and the reason why we talked about doing a podcast episode on this, and actually we decided that we're going to read books and like we're going to do all our podcast episodes on books that we read. But I have to take a rebuke because in the very first episode where we talked about why the name Two Bros Lit, there was a moment in that episode where we talk about reading, and I say, yeah, man, I've read so many books that it all just kind of becomes repetitive, and there's just
Yeah.
really nothing that I can learn anymore. And one of the first things that he talked about was education does not end. And then in the very next chapter, you referenced it. He talks about reading. He talks about if you could have Seneca, or if you could have Marcus Aurelius, or if you could have any of these Stoics, or really intelligent Benjamin Franklin, Abraham Lincoln, who he talks about a lot in the book. If you could have
Right.
any of these people, I don't know that Abraham actually wrote a book, but if you could have any of these people sitting right here next to us right now, sitting right here, if I could talk to Marcus Aurelius, how
Mm.
stupid am I to not take advantage of that opportunity? And you know what? Brian Tipton has never read Meditations by Marcus
Mm.
Aurelius. And literally, I have the opportunity to talk to the dead.
Right.
And I'm sitting here talking to my brother on Two Bros Lit podcast about how I've learned it all
Mm.
and how there's really nothing that I can learn from books because they're all repetitive. And I even gave the example of Deep Work by Cal Newport. And it was an excellent book. Like it really was. But the little that I took away with from that book, and a lot of this is because of my attitude, but it was, hey, go sit in a corner for a long period of time and do work. And that's
Mm.
all that I took from it. But then as like even as you're talking, the sitting and the thinking and the sitting and the writing and the sitting and the reading, like that's so important, not only so that it can help me now. And I think that's probably where my perspective was off, was I was looking at how can this book Wisdom Takes Work, or how can this book, Deep Work by Cal Newport, how can this book, whatever it may be, help me right now? And if I'm just reading it for what it can help me with now, then I'm not going to gain everything that I could gain when if I sit and stew on it. So I went through this book once, and then I went through it again a second time, and I took notes on it. And as you said, like there were so many virtues, so many nuggets that I picked up, and there were things that annoyed me. Like we've already talked about that. There were
Mm.
a few things that really annoyed me about the book, but being able to look past those things that annoyed me to actually learn something, like that was a smack in the face. Like that was a huge smack in the face for me, and I'm super excited that we have decided we're going to read and learn not only from Ryan Holiday, but we have other books on the list. We'll talk about. I'm going to list those at the end. But that was the first thing that I learned was talk to the dead, take advantage of these opportunities, and education never stops. Like you never stop learning.
You know, it's funny. When I first came across Ryan Holiday, it was a light bulb moment for me. And it's the probably the favorite phrase that I like in this book was when it was to start the third. like the third series of the book, like the third stage, I guess, in the book. And Ryan Holiday says everybody is born equal, and then there are those who discover philosophy, meaning like we're all like equal and to a certain extent, and
Wait,
then
did he say that in here?
he did, yeah.
I
I don't
totally
know,
missed that.
if you open up to like the third stage,
Right.
when I read that, I wrote in my book, I was like, I absolutely love this because Stoicism, I've read Meditations. I read it yearly. In fact, when we talk about like what our favorite books are, and my top five is Meditations. And the whole point of Stoicism is to control your mood because Stoicism. When I was coaching, I tell my players all the time. I even tell Soren this. There's only two things you can control in life. It's your attitude and your effort. And Stoicism is all about controlling yourself despite the fact that you can't control other people, you can't control circumstances, but you can control your attitude and how you respond to them, and you can control how you show up every day and work hard. And I think that's the thing about Stoicism. It teaches you how to have a good mood. And in fact, he even wrote about George Raveling, which is a prominent basketball coach, in his book, how George Raveling has, when he wakes up in the morning, he has two decisions. Do I wake up with a good mood or do I wake up with a really good mood? It's the choice is his. And that's kind of like what Stoicism is. And that's why I kind of secretly or quietly latched on to Ryan Holiday's work, as well as I got other books by Seneca, by Epictetus. Meditations, of course, is one of them. Even the Emperor's Rule Book for Life, which is like a modern day written meditations, where it's kind of Englishized and given more modern day type examples, which
Hmm.
is a good read. But yeah, I think that this book does go through how education is up to you. Like you're in school and your teachers educate you up to a certain point, but then once you're done with that, like your learning is up to yourself. And if you determine to be a lifelong learner or not, that kind of will set you apart from other people. So I'm excited you liked it, man, because I know that you like more sometimes fiction stuff. I don't like
Yeah.
fiction. And so to
Yeah.
connect with you on this book has a lot more meaning. I'm excited to hear more thoughts on what you have to say.
Well, you say that. That means that we can't do all nonfiction books if that's the case. That means we're going to have to do a fiction book.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So,
I can do it. I can do it. I can do it.
and I have my top five. So at the end of this episode, we're going to talk about our top five. And I actually did top
Yep.
five nonfiction books and
Okay.
top five fiction books. So
Okay.
I'm interested in hearing what you have to say. Yours is going to be
Okay.
filled with all this like stoicism, like deep thought, deep work stuff. Mine's going to be like Harry Potter.
Yeah, but there's so many there. But I know like just to jump ahead a little bit. I know David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me, is on the list.
Yep.
And but there's so many things that we can learn from fictional characters or biographies, and I
True.
think there's so much that we can learn. So either way, I'm reading and it's good.
So, two of the things, and this relates to what you said, one of the things that he said is it doesn't matter if we can read. If we choose not to, we are functionally illiterate.
Mm,
And
right.
secondly, something that he said is reread something you've already read because if there was value in it the first time, then there will continue to be value in reading it the second, third, fourth, and fifth time. I think that was a big hit for me because if I have books, and you can even see them, like I have books on my
Mm,
shelf. I've
right.
read all of these books. Like I would say half of them are fiction, half of them are nonfiction. But I have read all of these books. And especially the nonfiction books, which ones have I gone back to read a second
Mm,
time? And if I don't pick up new stuff to read, and if I don't go back and read the books that I've already read, then I'm essentially the same as somebody who grew up in a country, never learned to read, never has access to books. Like, how shameful is it? Like, I can't get over that. How
mm,
shameful is it that I can sit here and say, oh, I've learned all that I need to learn. Like I don't need to read anything else. I'm essentially the same as a functionally illiterate person who never learned how to read. And that person, if you gave them the opportunity to sit down and read some of these works to learn, would they eagerly take it and just eat it up?
mm,
Well, looking at Brian, like that's not something that I was doing. In fact, I would say that I was in not a dry spell, but like I was in a book famine almost, to where for years all that I've read is fiction. And then there's nothing wrong with fiction. Like fiction's great, and I've read some excellent fiction works, and we're going to talk about that at the end.
Mhm.
But the value of nonfiction, and again, going back to wisdom, wisdom is a lagging indicator. So the wisdom that I have now is from the mistakes that I've made in the past. It's from the books that I've read in the past. It's from the places that I've been, which he talks about. It's from the people that I've interacted with. But if I reach a point to where I'm like, I'm wise enough, well then I don't have wisdom at that point, because wisdom realizes that I will never have enough. And the person who claims, "Oh, I'm a wise person," or "I'm full of wisdom," in a moment, in an instant, that that person is not wise, because the wise person realizes that you never stop gaining wisdom. How do you feel about that?
I mean, there's so much to unpack there. I mean, you think about Ryan Holiday says that the path to book or to path to wisdom or the secret to living a great life is not $20 million invested in stocks. It's not that yacht. It's not designer clothes. It's actually reading. That's the
Mm-hmm.
secret to a great life. And the reason
It's
why,
accessible to everybody,
exactly. But yeah, that is
anybody.
right. So he also says that the whole conversations with the dead, like he talks about how that's a great conversation. He also goes on to say how books allow us to gain cheaply what others have kind of learned through hard work or through the hard
Right.
knock life. But we can
Right.
learn it just by reading what they have to say, and it's really up to us if we want to learn that. And so the whole Talk to the Dead part was something that I had never heard in that way. But I thought that was interesting. And the whole functionally illiterate part to me was, I mean, he gave the illustration of, I think it was this Roman officer was trying to sound smart in front of like all these
Oh, right.
people. So he
Yep.
hired or he bought like 100 slaves so that he could, who were well read, to take their wisdom and to appear like he was smart. And it's funny because we have a common friend that we went to high school with. Without mentioning names, he has very distinctly said, "I don't read books. I gain all of my wisdom through watching YouTube videos. And all you need to do is watch a 15 YouTube video and you can gain all the information that you need on a certain topic." And it's funny because I wrote that person's name in the book on the side margin when it came across this section. And I also wrote, there is no difference between someone who can't read and someone who won't read. And that when I heard that statement like maybe 7 or 8 years ago, that was when I kind of flipped the script or flipped the switch on I need to read because I don't like I don't have enough wisdom. I don't have enough experience. But books can give you that mentor that you don't have. They can give you that counselor that you need. That's what the power of books are. In that section underneath the functionally illiterate, he asked the question, "What is your reading age?" Basically, it is like how many years of experience do you have because of your reading? What is your reading age? Like, what do you think your reading age is?
I mean, I would be the equivalent of maybe a 25-year old, 26. Because
Okay,
I've read a lot. Like we've had these
right.
discussions. I've read a ton, mostly on like financial topics, because that's a deep interest of mine. So I've read massive amounts of financial books. So, for example, Robert Kiyosaki, he wrote the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which we're
Mhm.
planning on reading eventually. Have you read that yet?
I mean, I've read it, but I haven't read it deeply. I just kind of read through it.
So he wrote that first one, and then he proceeded, because he made a lot of money off the first one, he proceeded to write like 15 books after Rich Dad Poor Dad. So you got Cash Flow Quadrant. I
Mhm.
can't even remember the name of it. Rich Brother, Rich Sister. He wrote one with Trump, actually. Why We Want You to Be Rich. So like I read all 15 of those books. So David Bach wrote Automatic Millionaire. And then he
Mhm.
proceeded, after the success of that book, to write like 4 or 5 or 6 more books. And I read all of those. Dave Ramsey, of course, wrote Financial Peace. And then he followed that up with the Total Money Makeover. And he has just consistently written books over the years. A lot of them repeat the same principles, the same concepts. But like I've read all of Dave Ramsey's books. Like I could go through financial authors like this,
Right.
and just name out the books that I've read. So I've read a lot, but I think that's almost like he talks about in this book being well traveled and how being well traveled adds to the wisdom that you have. It interacting with people, seeing different situations. And he talked about who was it? Montaigne? I can't remember who it was that traveled. No, it was Herodotus, right?
Mm.
That would travel and write books of history. And he would go to an Buddhist temple and see how they did things. He would go to Greek Orthodox temple, see how they did things. And like in India, for example, they would actually cut off a piece of their dead and eat it as representation of the
Mm.
love and respect that they have for that person. When people in India heard about how people in Greece would burn the bodies of their dead out of respect, they were appalled. And so he's
Mm-hmm.
talking about how being well traveled like helps you be more wise. But point being, I've read a lot of books, but I have not. It's almost as if I have taken a lot of visits to one country. So
Mm.
let's say that I just love the country of Germany and I've flown to Germany 27 times and I've visited everything there is to see in Germany. Well, as we know, Germans look at life very different than anybody else in the world. Like Germans have a very specific way of looking at other cultures, other people, other countries. They're a very proud culture. So if I'm live in the US and I only go to Germany and then that encompasses my worldview, well, I'm missing so much. Like I'm missing India, I'm missing Greece, I'm missing France, I'm missing Africa, I'm missing Russia and China. Like I'm not learning all that I can. And so therefore the wisdom that I do have may be sufficient in one country or one category. I don't know everything about finances, but so I'm good in this area and I'm maybe 40 years old in the finance category, but man, I'm a teenager when it comes to stuff like this. Like
Mm.
I'm ashamed that I've never ridden, even though you've recommended for the literally the past 6 or 7 years. I even
Mm.
bought them at one time. It's kind of a funny story, but I bought Obstacles the Way, Ego's the Enemy, Stillness is Key on my Kindle. And then I was having, this is maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, I was having problems opening them up. And so I'm like, bah, like I'm not even going to worry about it. And then a year later, I'm like, man, you know what? Brent's been talking about these books. Like I really should read them. They're kind of boring. It's dead people. Like, why do I want to listen to dead people? Why would I ever want to talk to dead people? They're boring, right? They're in the past.
Right.
I live in the now. Finance is in the now. Invest now. And so so I was having problems opening them up on my Kindle. I contacted Amazon representative and they're like, "You know what? We're just going to just delete them from your Kindle and then we're going to re-upload them to your Kindle." And I'm this is an embarrassing story, okay? Like I'm ashamed to tell you this story. They said, "We're going to re-upload them to your Kindle." They re-uploaded them, and I don't know if you know, but Amazon has a policy that if you return books within 30 days, you can get all your money back. And I think I had bought them on sale
Ah.
on my Kindle for like, I don't know, 7.99 a piece or something. And I looked on my Kindle and I could return the books. And
You
it was
did.
returned them at normal price.
You returned them, didn't you?
I returned I returned all the books and never read them.
Hey, the obstacle is the way. That is
Uh, so
great. That's a
so
great story.
so in finances, I'm pretty well read, but
See, I'm
in
not.
other
I'm
categories,
not.
another categories I'm not. What would you say your age is when it comes to reading?
7 years. 7 years old.
Ah, I see what you
So
mean. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I started reading when I was in 2018. I started reading because just just wanted to read. Just weird. I just wanted to read, and I bought a couple of coaching books, a couple of books on Phil Jackson, kind of going through a dry spell coaching wise, and I bought The Subtle Art of Not Giving a two Phil Jackson books and a Ryan Holiday book, and that's where all the first one, Obstacle is the Way, and those were like the start of this journey. And then every year I set goals to read a certain amount of books, except for this year because we're going to be going deeper into books. But My all-time goal was like 60 books. I did that like 3 years ago. Then last year it was 80 books. No, 2024 was 80 books. 2025 was only like 37 or something like that. So yeah, my reading age is 7. Going back to the traveling part, I agree that traveling is one of those things that kind of not enlightens you, but it gives you a fresh perspective of other people that makes you appreciate other cultures. I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious because we were going to have a whole episode on this when you were going to come to, or when you got back home from Germany. What did you walk away with kind of being enlightened with, or kind of gave you bigger or better perspective of being American coming to visit Paris and France and then in Germany? What was something that you walked away with?
So one of the first things that I remember is people in other countries are, you have two extremes. So you have some of the nicest people that I've ever met have were met on this trip. Like they were just genuinely nice. So in Europe, there's no tipping. Like it's not a tipping culture. So a lot of times, and we talked about this when I was there, where in America you're expected to tip, and not only you're expected to tip, you're expected to tip 20%. So if your bill is $100, you're expected to give the server $20. Like at a minimum, you're expected to give them $20 for their time, and you may be there for an hour, and they are expecting you to pay them $20. So that distorts the relationship between server and patron to where sometimes it might feel a little fake. So the servers that we had in Europe were just genuinely nice, and we never had to tip. Not once. They were not expecting a tip. And I was amazed at the fact that they were so nice. I was like, "We're you're sure? Are you sure, Brent? Like we don't have to tip. Like what? Why are they being so nice? This doesn't make any sense. Why are they being nice and I don't have to pay them to be? Well, it's just it's culture. At
Mhm.
the same time, I met some of the nicest people that I've ever met in Europe. I also met some of the rudest people that I've ever met, more rude than anybody I've ever met in America. Now, granted, I've been to New York City, but I've been outside. So I've been to Queens. I think it was Queens. I can't remember. Anyway, I've never been to Manhattan. I've never been to downtown New York City. So maybe this is the case in New York City. But like when we went to Paris, people would literally shove you, I like not like push you, but people would like literally push you out of the way. People were rude. People would almost make fun of you. Like it was a place of extremes where you had some of the nicest people on one hand and some of the rudest people on the other hand. So I would say out of everything, I mean everything is beautiful. Like Eiffel Tower, cool, right?
Mhm.
Disney Paris, cool. Getting to see the Arc de Triomphe, like all of that, super cool. But the people was most interesting. The German people were the most interesting to me because they were nice, but then they would clip it off. So they
Mhm.
were pleasant, but then it's all right, I got you your beer. Are you good? Bye. And then they would
Right.
leave. So
Mhm.
they were nice to a point, but not overly nice. Like they were never more nice than they had to be,
Mhm.
which was interesting. So I don't know. That was probably my first response to it.
No,
So
it's
yeah.
good. I mean, what? Yeah, I was just curious because I mean, we had a whole episode on that. I was hoping to ask more questions on that, but
Maybe I'll do a special episode.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Maybe we can tie some of that in here because I know travel for us is a huge thing, and we want Soren to be able to travel and see that he's not special and that there are
Right.
so many other people out there that have different religions, different wardrobe, they have different food habits, and I think that's
Yep.
important for them in their own development. So the next thing that you have on our list is be curious, ask questions, focus, and listen. That was a combination of about, I think, 3, 4 chapters that go together.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
what was your thoughts and your biggest takeaway from being curious, asking more questions, and then focusing and then listening? Because that kind of, if we have wisdom, shouldn't we be sharing that wisdom? Like, shouldn't we be telling everybody what we know? And shouldn't we put ourselves on like a totem, or not a totem pole, but like on a stage for people to learn from us? Like, what was
Right.
something that you got
Right.
out of that section?
So I have two thoughts. Number one is he really emphasized the fact that we have two ears and one mouth, right? So we always need to listen to people more than we talk. And that is something that I've gotten better at over the years. I read a book once, and I can't remember who it was, but there are famous people, and maybe it was probably a podcast because I listened to a ton of podcasts. It may have been somebody like Steven Spielberg or like some famous movie director who met the podcaster in question, and the podcaster they said that, and I don't remember if it was Spielberg or not, but they said that this individual, this famous director, was just asking them questions the whole night. And then at the end of the night, the podcaster realized I had whoever it was, Steven Spielberg, at my disposal, and I was the one that did all the talking. But also, I think on the flip side, that shows how wise somebody like that is. And the reason that they're able to be so successful in life is because they're willing to be curious. They're willing to stop and ask questions. They're willing to learn. That's the first thing that comes to mind. The second thing that comes to mind is don't be a Brian, where you
Mm,
stop learning and where you stop asking questions. So, a lot of times, the reason that people stop asking questions is because they don't know the questions to ask. And the way that we can learn what questions to ask
mhm.
is by reading books like this.
Wow.
Books
Yep.
where, oh man, I never thought of the concept of talking with the dead.
Hmm.
Like, obviously, like just talking to you now, that concept alone has hit me the hardest. Like, talking with the dead, I have the opportunity to ask questions. And granted, I'm not going to be like, hey, Abraham Lincoln, what was your favorite food to eat? Like, I mean, maybe he wrote that in a book, but like I have the opportunity to essentially ask questions of Benjamin Franklin and Marcus Aurelius and
Hmm.
Seneca and Epictetus, like all of these people, and I'm not asking the questions. You know why I'm not asking the questions? You know why I'm not curious about their lives? Because I got bored with reading. Like, I keep
Hmm.
coming back to that, which is why I wrote this down. Be curious, ask questions, focus, and listen. So, yes, that applies to us right now. Like, I'm learning from you. I need to shut my mouth, which I'm talking a lot. I need to learn from Brent. And then also, secondly, I need to learn to listen to people who have written books that have made it, and learn from their lives and listen to how they have chosen to live their life. Did it affect you in the same way? Like, did you have thoughts on
I
listening,
had
being
thoughts.
curious, all of that?
I had thoughts, but man, let's stop it right there because that is exactly how it should have been said. Also on my top five books is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Have you heard of that book
Mm-hmm.
before?
Yep, I have
Okay.
it. It's right over there. Yeah.
Asking questions is a page out of his, or not a page, but it's a page out of his playbook and
Yeah.
how to influence people, how to win friends. And it's funny because I don't know how to share this, but when we go out with people that let's say we go out for dinner, I have this goal to make them talk the entire time just by genuinely asking them questions. And because I know that if I start talking about myself, then the other person is going to be bored because I'm a boring person and I haven't really accomplished a whole lot of really crazy stuff. So I always am cognizant and aware that if I can get to know them on a genuine and deeper level, then and be curious to them and ask them questions, and I think that makes their not just perspective of me be higher, but when somebody talks about themselves, like anytime you ask me a question in our podcast, I'm like, oh, good, I get to talk. You know what I mean? Like
Yes, that's how we feel. Yeah.
it's a natural like desire to make what we have to say and our opinions and what we value as what everybody else should value and what everybody else should have an opinion on, the same as us. But it's not the case. But I did take that from the same thing that you took from it. I read a little bit about Buddhism and being curious. They talk a lot about having a beginner's mind or having the curiosity of a child. And it's funny that when we're most mentally healthy was probably when we were a child because we had that curiosity or
Curiosity.
we had that beginner's mind of everything being new, everything being fresh. But then you also talked about a little bit about focus here. There was also a chapter. I think it was focus, focus, focus was the name of the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And I just went through and I did some really quick research on how long people are on their devices and on social media and on Netflix. And it was like 5 hours a day. No, it was 20 plus hours a week binging Netflix. And then now it's up to 5 hours a day just scrolling on social media. And like maybe the reason why we can't ask questions, we can't be curious, is because we kind of become brain dead, or we have brain rot. And I think that kind of goes back to this book of how to combat all of that is reading. We haven't talked about it yet, but writing and then thinking. I think that that is might be the cure to the anxiety and burnout and all of that that social media seems to have brought upon us the last maybe 10 years. So those are kind of some of the things that I took from, I guess, those four chapters that he talked about being curious, asking questions, and listening.
So I have a question for you, something that I brought up in the beginning, but how does this book compare with his first three books? So how does this compare with Obstacles Away, Still is Key, Ego's the Enemy? Since this is the first book that I read of Ryan Holiday's, like I really got some nuggets out of it. But how does it compare to the first three?
I mean, I'd say it is just as good. And the fact that we're talking about this book in particular, because it's so fresh in my mind, this book is, I think, right there with the other three. And if you get stuff out of this three, um, or out of this book, I think you're going to get major things out of the his first three books, just because it's the same concept, it's the same flow. He talks about three different things, like how an obstacle is the way. He uses very similar people. He uses Abraham Lincoln a lot. And in fact, because of Ryan Holiday, last summer I got like two or three books on Abraham Lincoln. One was Tried by War, which was about Lincoln and his thought process and the things that he went through during the Civil War and the decisions that he made
Mm-hmm.
and why he made them. And he was a man taken to depression and melancholy. And he was a stout stoic and used reading and writing and thinking to get through a lot of his own inner demons, I guess you could say. But it's the first three books. I mean, when we get to them, I think you're going to be like, man, I wish I would have read these sooner, because to me they're powerful. And I think anytime you can think about how to improve yourself, I mean, I think there's always these seven step guides to happiness. But I think reading and I'm gonna go back to those three things: reading, writing, and thinking. I think that that is the path to having a great life.
Well, expand a little bit more on the writing part because he talks about creating a second brain,
Mm.
which I put down. This is something that I'm not very good at. Like I have kept a journal in the past, and I know that you've mentioned on previous episodes, like Tim Ferriss says, 2 crappy pages a day, right? Just get something out. And I was listening to a podcast recently where they talked about start something that you can continue doing. And what a lot of people do when they journal is the first day they'll journal for 2 hours. Like, oh, I got to get it all out on this paper.
Hmm.
And then by the third day, like they can barely fill up half a page when he's like, look, if you're going to do this, limit it to 10 minutes. Write for 10 minutes, set a timer, like literally bring out your phone, set a timer for 10 minutes, write. The moment that that timer goes off, put your pen down. Stop writing. The reason is because if you're like, oh my gosh, I got to do it for 30, well, then on the second day, you're going to be like, well, I wrote for 30 minutes yesterday. Like I got to write for 30 minutes. And it becomes almost like people who do New Year's resolutions where they're
Hmm.
like, I'm going to go to the gym. And the first day they go to the gym and they use all the machines. And
Right.
then the second day they come back and they use 10 of the machines. And then the third day they come back, they use 3 of the machines. Fourth day, they're like, I'm tired. Fifth day, I'm like, oh, I'll go for a walk rather than go to the gym. And then by the seventh day, they're like, you know what? That was a bad goal anyway. So, how do you write? How do you create a second brain? And this is literally something that I'm an infant on because it's not something that I've done. And I've been like, well, should I keep it on my phone? Like should I type out notes on my phone? Should I have like an actual physical journal that I can write in? Which a lot of the examples that he uses in this book is that literally people would have journals just like stacked. I know that
Right.
you use it like a note card system. Like, do you keep that in the little box with the lid that pops open? Like, how do you create your second brain? And this is something that I can learn from.
Well, think about it this way. If you're not learning or you're not trying to improve yourself, what do you have to talk about? And if you're not present during your day, I'm not saying this about you, but this is me. If if I'm not present, if I'm not learning, what would I write about? If I'm not observant of Soren, I wrote about Soren's swim meet this morning because he had a swim meet
Yeah.
yesterday and what he accomplished. So if I'm not present in my family's life, what am I going to write about? Ryan Holiday goes in this chapter, Create a Second Brain. He says a couple of things that I really resonated with. He says, "We are writing to think right, to understand what we feel and know, but most specifically to know who we are." And to me, that's what writing has been, is to kind of find myself. And I know it may sound kind of cliche, but I'll give you a couple of illustrations. I started journaling when I was getting very serious about pursuing professional coaching. So I had gotten into the FIBA Europe coaching certificate, which was probably that first step into realizing that this is what I was wanting to do. And that's another story in itself. Then I got into Basketball Australia. They're like coaching, basically, their highest level of coaching education that you could get through Basketball Australia. And I got into it as a guest. And I'm like, well, maybe things are happening because this is where I need to be moving towards. So I started journaling about it. Fast forward 5 years later, I'm out of coaching. And the reason being is because it was a source of anxiety and dread and major, major, major stress in my life and my family's life, because of the time I was away from them, the stress that maybe I wasn't built for with the competitive side. Not that I'm not a high performer, but I could never turn it off. I could never turn my brain off. I would never come to that conclusion if I had not journaled, because I saw for 5 years writing about anxiety and the dread to coach, how I didn't love it for 5 years. And for 2 or 3 years straight, it was almost every single day because I have a goal to
Mm.
journal 20 days out of the 30-day month. And I journaled, no joke, 60 no, sorry. It was 6 months. So how many days is that? I journaled every day straight for 6 months and
180 days.
180 days. And that kind of like, whoa, that to me, I was able to go back and see how I felt, what I was saying about the art of coaching, and then how much I said I valued my family and the time with my family. And I had to match what I said my values were with the choices that I made. So I
Right.
stopped coaching. And I say all that to say, because if I hadn't written it down, because I mean, I have short-term memory loss for other reasons that we,
Because of me.
right?
Because of me.
So
Yeah.
this creating this second brain is like kind of hit me because I have to write things down because I can't remember everything. And so, in a roundabout way, that's to me, that's what journaling has been for me. It's more of like a form of contemplation. I don't write in my journal to tell people how smart I am, but I write to kind of preach and speak to myself. And then I go back, and every year or so, I'll go back, hey, what I do on this day in 2023, what I do on this day in 2021. And it kind of puts in perspective of how far I've come, but also I still need to keep growing.
So I have a few questions about
Yeah.
that. But first, let's not let that hang. Like, the reason that you have short-term memory loss is because when I was 20 and you were 17, we decided that it was a great idea to go to 105 on a backcountry road, and I was the one driving, so I accept all responsibility. I
I didn't
also
have my
had a
seatbelt
20.
on though. I didn't have my seatbelt on.
Yeah,
That's
but
why
I had a 20-year-old brain. You had a 17-year-old brain, and we had an accident that was not good. So
we
that's
didn't
the
have a second
reason.
brain.
You're definitely not at that time. So I'm
Yeah.
curious about specifics. Like,
Okay.
do you write at the end of each day? Do you write at the beginning of each day? And do you keep it in a journal? If you do keep it in like a journal, like a spiral bound notebook or what, or I know that you use a note card system. So are you just writing stuff down on note cards? Like, what specific, when do you write specifically, and on what do you write specifically? And I guess third question would be, about what do you write specifically?
So I write almost every morning when I'm drinking coffee. So I wake up between 3:45 and 4:30 in the morning on most days. Get my coffee. I like to have a candle going because it smells good. And it's just kind of, to me, it puts me in like a
Puts you in
contemplative.
the mood. Yep.
Yep. And then so I write. I have a moleskin. The moleskin is a little bit bigger than an iPhone, and they have different
A
sizes.
moleskin?
A moleskin is like it's like a journal. Like it's like it has it's lined. It could be hard back. It could be a kind of a softer back, but it's just perfect because if you don't want to write a lot, actually, this 3x5 card, it's about the size of a 3x5 card turned upside down. And if you don't want to
Okay.
write a lot, you write what you want on the first page, and then you're done. And then if you want to continue, obviously you write on the second page. It takes you about 10 minutes to write for 2 pages. I label every single journal entry. Today is Sunday, January 11th, 2026. Underneath that, I put the topic that I'm journaling about. So this morning, my journal entry was yesterday's Soren swim meet yesterday was the name of my journal entry. And then I just wrote about what he did, some of the he in fact was supposed to swim a 50-meter fly, and he hit the wall, turned around, and was continuing to go down the pool. Everybody else stopped. They were all screaming at him, trying to get him to stop. He was so focused, he swam another 25 meters, which is a half the length of the pool. Finally realized that we're all yelling at him, and this whole gym full of people are yelling at him. And then he looks up, swims through the other lanes to get out, and then came to me. Then I could tell he was very, very embarrassed because he was almost crying. He's very red. He buried his head into my chest. I went back to my chair and I he sat on my lap and I held him and we talked about that how people really didn't realize that you had done that, and
Mm-hmm.
people didn't think bad about you, and in fact
Yeah.
they probably respected the fact that you had the focus to keep going. So I was just trying
Right.
to speak positively to him. Anyway, I say all that to say I put that in my journal because I don't want to forget that moment of him. Yeah, that's it. That's it. I don't
Gotcha.
want him to. I don't
Okay.
want him to. I don't want him to forget that. I don't want to forget that moment.
Right.
And the reason why I write is because like Montaigne and all these other people, like Epictetus, Ryan Holiday writes how they wrote a million words, or they wrote 1,000 pages, or they had um, 10 volumes of writing. And he also goes to say that they didn't write because it was for other people; they wrote because it was for
For
them.
themselves. Yep.
But for me, I'm writing because Katie's mother had, when she passed, she had gotten all of her journals, and so Katie reads her journals because you see the life that Jerry, her mother, lived, and it's touching because she fought cancer for 25 years. Um, she had a really hard life from like 40 to 65, and so Katie, it touches Katie, and I mean I hope I can live a great life and be healthy and be there for Soren when he's my age, but Katie's mom isn't. So I want to leave him with maybe the dumb stuff of the things that I struggled with, but I want him to know that I struggled and that I was trying to fix myself.
That's so important.
And journals are the way to leave that for him to read through. And there's actually a book, I don't know who talks about it. I think Ryan Holiday talks about it on his Facebook page, but he says there's a book out there that's written about, that is a memoir from a father to a son about how terrible of a dad he was. Sounds
Right.
really
I remember
good,
that.
but the son gave the book back to his mom and said, I don't want to read it. Anyway, that's what the book is about. It's about why the son doesn't want to read the dad's memoir because the dad was a horrible dad. And so hopefully, like, I'm not a horrible dad. I know I'm not a horrible dad, but I tell Soren too that when he's 30 years old, I want to be his best friend because I put in the time for that to happen. But what if I don't get there? Then I want him to know that that was my thought process the whole time. And I write about it. And I want him to know that that's how I feel about him. So I write about what I'm learning. I write about Soren. I write about what we're doing as a family. I write about some of my struggles that I call my demons. Um, and I try to be as honest as I can without, um, I guess this sounds bad, but being too truthful, because I don't think you need to say every little dark part of your mind and your heart needs to go into your journal, but I think that they need to know that you're human, because a lot of times we parents don't admit the fact that we make mistakes. And in my
Hmm.
journal, I will admit those to him. I apologize to him and I admit it to him in person, but um, that's why I journal. And I don't know if there was
For
a
him,
bigger question, but
yeah, for
that's
him to
kind of
know that internal struggle, like for him to be aware that you're not perfect and you realize that you're not perfect. I mean, that's so important for sure. So one of the other things that he talks about is after he talks about creating a second brain, which is definitely something that I need to do. He talks about joining a scene, and in joining a scene, he talks about surrounding yourself with like-minded people. And I consider myself to have surrounded myself with you. You've already been a good influence, right?
hmm.
But I also wrote, this is tougher due to the difficulty of finding like-minded friends. But surrounding ourselves with wise people who will challenge us is, of course, a wise decision. How do you approach this? And in a sense, joining a scene also means reading good books of people who think the way that you want to think. I mean, maybe it could mean going on Reddit and reading about what other people think of Ryan Holiday's works. Like, how do you approach joining a scene, finding friends, finding like-minded people? Like, what did you think about that section?
I didn't write anything down, but when you say that, what first comes to my mind is you are the person who you surround your the top. You are the top five people you surround yourself with.
Right,
And even kind of also something that kind of I learned when I was a kid from our own father was the most influential thing in your life are the books you read and the people you meet.
right.
I really didn't have any. I was hoping you would expand more on this because I didn't really write anything down about join a scene. So how do you, being very knowing what you believe, and how is it for you to try to invest in relationships that you know uh, aren't gonna flourish, I guess, as deeply as you would like them to because you don't line up on what you believe? And like, how do you try to relate to other people and influence other people, even though you may not see eye to eye with them?
Yeah, this is a really hard question because I have people who I've interacted with in the past, and I think the biggest thing for me is respect. And I've had people who I've been good friends with for a while, and then for some reason their beliefs trumped the need for our friendship. And so at that point we decide to go separate ways if that's the case. Like this is one of the toughest points to make, and I do believe it's important, but also I think it's contradicted in his book a little bit because when he talks about Herodotus traveling and Montaigne doing all his studies, they were doing all of that alone.
This is a hard question, man, and I maybe this is why I avoided it. I honestly avoided
Yeah,
this question. So,
man. Okay, so I think it's contradicted a little bit in the book because when he talks about when he uses his examples like Herodotus and Montaigne and like he shows them being by themselves, like being by themselves, going into the library. Like he uses examples of the servants or the people would talk about how he would talk to himself and write on the walls and would orate certain passages. Like he's not doing that with other people, he's doing that by himself. So while I do see the importance of surrounding yourself with good friends and 100% agree, like that your top five people are going to be who you're most like your friends are either going to pull you up or pull you down. Birds of a feather flock together, like all of that. If you want to read more and be more wise, well then be around people who are going to read more and be more wise. Like all of that applies. But also I think if you can find that one good friend that you can bounce ideas off of, and we are extremely fortunate, like extremely fortunate that we have a brother who is interested in the same things that we are. And granted, we don't line up eye for eye on everything. Like
no.
even when I was in Germany, we had a little bit of disagreement on a few issues, but for the
Mm,
most part, we believe the same and we both have a goal of being more wise.
mm,
I think something that I've learned, something that I've grown more wise over through experiences is learning to accept people even though they have differences that you may disagree with at an extreme level. So there are people that I wish that I was friends with now that I stopped being friends with, and I'm going to use an extreme example, right? That I stopped being friends with, and I'm not thinking of any one particular person, but I stopped being friends with maybe because they believed in abortion,
Mm.
right? Oh, you believe in abortion? Well, I believe in pro-life. We can't be friends because you believe in abortion.
Yeah.
Or making a more modern example, they believe that Trump is a fascist. And I'm like, oh, well, I like Trump.
Hmm.
So therefore, you believe he's a fascist? That's just too much for us to be friends. Or maybe it's the opposite side. Maybe I believe that Trump's a fascist and they think that Trump is just the best thing in the world, and they won't stop talking about how 2020 was a stolen election from Donald Trump, and they just go on and on and on. And I believe that Trump's a fascist, right? Well, whatever the belief that there may be, if they're a good friend and if they're willing to grow me like this relationship, I need to learn how I can look past some of those big issues so that I can maintain that friendship that helps build me up as a person. Now, granted, if we have these opposing views on political beliefs or personal beliefs, whatever it may be, and at the same time, they don't build me up as a person. They're just somebody that I can go watch UFC with at their house. Well, then maybe that's not the best relationship for me to pursue. But if they're a good person, we have some different beliefs about a few different things. Maybe it's something as innocuous as how they raise their child. Like, we have friends who raise their children differently than we do. We have friends who are extremely lax with their kids. Like, the parents will literally tell us, "Oh yeah, my kids are into porn." Like, that's a pretty extreme belief, right? And
Right.
I'm not going to let my kid be into porn. And
Right.
they're like, "Well, he's 12, he's 13, he's old enough to be able to watch it if he wants to watch it." Well, if that relationship is building up and if I can gain wisdom from that individual, even though I may strongly disagree with them on that point, the reality is, how much is that point going to come up? Like, in reality, I've known some of these people for 3, 4, 5 years. That's only ever been mentioned one time in
Mm.
all of our interactions. So
Mm.
therefore, am I going to let something that I strongly disagree with like that ruin a good friendship? And I have let that happen in the past. We've had friends who are extremely tough on their children, like expecting the best of them in every single situation. And for instance, if they are taking a math test, if they get anything less than a 99, well, they're punished. Well, you have to go to bed early tonight. You have to go to bed at 7 with no phone and no games because you made a 99 on that test and you should have made 100. Like, do I fundamentally disagree with that form of parenting? Yes, I think that's much too hard and rash on that child. And in the past, in those types of relationships, I would have let something like that bother me to the point to where I'm not going to be friends with that person anymore. I'm not just going to talk to them, but I need to look at my friendships a little more closely. And sure, if we have a fundamental disagreement, like I'm going to let my kid watch porn, like that's a
Yeah.
pretty something I disagree with on pretty strongly. If I look at that, but I look at the overall relationship that we have, and as long, look, let's just not talk about that aspect. Like, that's not something I'm going to let my kid do. If you want to let your kid do that, like, parenting is hard. You make the choices for your kid, like, you draw the boundaries. And just to add, like, these parents are great parents, like, great people. And if I'm learning from them and building myself up from them, then I need to learn to overlook those things where I strongly disagree, as long as the overall relationship is healthy. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. Does that stir up any thoughts in you?
Yeah, so can there be categories of friends then? Because if let's just go
It's
back
a
to
good
that
point.
the porn illustration. If that 12-year-old, 12 whatever, how old he is watching porn, and Soren goes over to his house and it
Right.
just happens to come up on his phone, then I don't want anything to do with that. You know what I mean? So
Right.
there's categories of levels of how much you reveal of yourself to some people and how much that you kind of stay surface. Does that make sense?
Right. No, 100%. Yeah. So maybe we're going out to eat with those friends, but we're not going to put our child in a position where they're going to be alone with their child,
Right.
not because we think that their child's a bad kid, but just because they have different standards
Mm,
than we
okay.
do on some of these issues. And so drawing lines, drawing boundaries, but still maintaining that good friendship, I think is really important. So I think we've been going for quite a while. We're over an hour now. I think we need to address the one thing that we really did not like in the
Okay.
book, end off with that, and then quickly at the end talk about our top 5 books if you want to go into that.
Yeah, sure.
But do you want to address the one thing that we didn't like, or do you want me to?
I mean, so what Brian's referring to is Ryan Holiday's obsession with Elon Musk.
Yeah,
And
there's no other
I
way to put it.
I
Obsession
just
is the best word.
I don't know because I don't know enough about Elon Musk. I mean, the only experience I have from Elon Musk is Doge, and we were not directly affected with from Doge, but we have coworkers that were. And I felt like with Ryan Holiday, when I think of the phrase "the pen is mightier than the sword," meaning good writing and journalism can maybe be more deadly than the sword can be. But in this case, I feel like Ryan Holiday is hiding behind his pen, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel like when it'd be like me going and critiquing, let's just say I'm a teacher and critiquing another teacher. This teacher does this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. They're horrible in this way. But I can also make bad choices and get caught an emotional reaction to a student and get in trouble. You know what I mean? Like I'm also very, very, very much human. And when Ryan Holiday, what I think has made him so successful is the way he interprets history and talking to the dead and evaluating those lives based upon what has been proven already, not just hearsay, not just opinion, about the effect of their lives, whether that's good or bad. And I just don't know if we can label Elon Musk as, I don't know, unless I just don't know something terrible about him, I just can't go off on Elon Musk right now, nor with any other conservative, liberal, or moderate person, because I just don't know those people to go off on them. Maybe Ryan Holiday does.
Yeah. So let's just be clear. Elon Musk is not the best person in the world. Like he has his faults. Same. He goes off on Donald Trump as well. Uh, but he goes off on Donald Trump in a way that I understand. Like he stops it at a certain point. I felt like
Right.
when with Elon Musk, he had a whole chapter on him, and then he continued like every other chapter to relate back to Elon Musk. And so like
And
for the last
and
20 chapters,
and he's in the afterword. So the
yeah,
last person that's on Ryan Holiday's mind is not a stoic thought. It's Elon Musk.
right. So let's just be clear that just as Donald Trump is not the best person in the world, he has some bad character flaws, which we know this. He
Yep.
said Donald Trump has said some nasty stuff, right?
Yep.
We recognize this. And whether you supported him politically or not, regardless of that fact, taking the fact that he's president of the United States out of the picture, Donald Trump can be a nasty person. Like,
Mhm.
let's just be clear.
Right.
So let's look at Elon Musk. Elon Musk has made some decisions and has thrown some tantrums and has not controlled his emotions in some bad ways, right? He's not Marcus Aurelius. He's not Abraham Lincoln. Like if you're gonna put Elon Musk head to head up with Abraham Lincoln, like let's just be honest, the character level of Abraham Lincoln is a lot higher than Elon Musk. But
Mhm.
I think the key is Elon Musk has never claimed to be of moral superiority to anybody else in this world. Like he has claimed to have accomplished a lot, to be
Mhm.
super intelligent, to have built multiple $1 trillion businesses, right? He
Mhm.
has claimed that, but he's never said, I'm the best human being. I've never heard him say, I have the highest level character. And he may have said, my opinion's right,
Mhm.
but the dude has, I think,
12 kids.
14
Yeah,
kids,
something
12
like that.
kids.
Right,
He
right.
has like 5 partners. So
Yep.
obviously the dude sleeps around. Obviously the dude is ruled by his passions at
Mhm.
times. But why Elon Musk is my question. Because there are plenty of examples, even in history, of people who were ruled by their own lust, who did not make great decisions that would have been better examples to use than a current example of Elon Musk. And while it may have been, oh, this is an interesting chapter to write about somebody who's very current in our, modern dialect and our modern discourse, so I'm going to write a chapter about this person and why I disagree with them. Okay, like I can see that. What I didn't like, and I understood the chapter, like he made his point. Elon Musk has accomplished so much in his life. He's a brilliant person, but yet it's sad that he's accumulated so much wealth in his life and he has had so much success, and yet he has these sad qualities, and he's proof and evidence that riches and success do not make a person wise. They do not make a person happy.
Mhm.
If
Right.
he had made that point, that yeah, 100%, I agree with that, and I think that Elon Musk is a great example. What I did not like was, okay, we used him as an example in a chapter, and then we brought him up again and 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 again, literally like
Mhm.
30 or 40 more times
Yeah.
throughout the rest of the book. I even wrote down the first 100 pages, which is the pre-Elon Musk portion of the book,
Right.
literally some of the best 100 pages of
Mhm.
any book that I've ever read. First 100 pages.
Mhm.
Awesome. I learned so much. I was rebuked. Then he did the chapter on Elon Musk. And then, unfortunately, there were, oh, that's a great chapter. Next chapter. Oh, that
Elon
was
Musk.
good, but holy cow, Elon Musk.
Let
Next
me
chapter.
whine. Let me
Wow.
Yeah. Let me whine about Elon Musk here again. It's funny in his afterword, he said, like, I really struggled about should I write these things about Elon Musk, but I really felt like the truth or whatever he said needed to be told, and I stand by what I say.
Sure.
And I think in hindsight, I don't know if that. And I'm sure it's going to age well because I'm sure there's like Elon Musk isn't going to change because it's funny we talked about this in person though. There's a chapter in this book about being self-aware, and I told you I was like, well, at least Elon Musk is self-aware. Like let's at least give him credit that he
Yeah.
knows that he is
Oh,
not
he knows.
the
Yeah.
top-notch person.
Yeah. So, in closing,
Oh
like
man, do we have
obviously
to
that,
close right now? Do we have to?
yeah.
This is good,
So,
man.
in closing,
It's good conversation. Oh, I know
so
why
that
you
that
want to go. I know why you want to go.
no, stop. Well, that's not a reason anymore because
Oh,
nobody's in the
okay.
house.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Okay.
So look, great book. And in closing, one of the things that he said, obviously, was not crazy about the obsession with Elon Musk, and I think that it could have been so much better of a book if we had had one chapter on Elon Musk and then we never mentioned him again for the rest of the book. Right?
Right,
I
right.
think this would, if that had been the case, this would be one of my top books, literally my top books. But
Wow.
I think it's short sighted for him too, because there will be, like we've talked about, there are people who are so pro Trump that they can think nothing else. There's also people on the left who are like that, who they are so pro Kamala Harris or so pro left ideology, they can literally think about nothing else. And if you're going to write
Right.
a book on stoicism, you're literally kicking out, you're literally pissing off all the people who are very pro Elon and
Mm.
pro Donald Trump politically, that you're
Well,
limiting your message.
maybe that's not a whole lot of people, so maybe he's not like limiting a whole lot of.
Maybe.
I don't know. I
Right.
don't know.
And maybe his point is, I don't care. And that's his right
Mhm.
to believe, well, I don't care. I'm a successful writer. I can write what I want. I disagree with his ideology. So therefore, I feel like I want to write about it. Okay, like I respect that completely.
Right.
But for me, it would have been a better book if we'd had one chapter using Elon Musk as an example. We get your point, but then leave him out of the rest of the book. Like
Right.
you can make your points without the little quip about Elon Musk here, about the little quip Elon Musk there.
Right. I'm
In
with you.
closing, I wrote the real reason to write a book, which is something that he said. The real reason to write a book and the reason why he does this, which I think you can see in his wording and what he uses. Or I, in my parentheses, I put, or to do a podcast, is
Hmm.
so that you will get better for having written it. So the reason to write a book, the reason to write a journal, the reason to do a project is so that I, as a person, will get better by doing this. And I know we've talked about this before. Like, we don't care if anybody listens. The reason that we're doing this is so that we can become better people. And we were texting the other day and we were talking about books. And I said, Brent, do you realize that over the next 10 years, if we're doing this 24, if we're reviewing 24 books or 2 books a month, essentially 26 books a year, we will have the opportunity to read and review 260 books over the next 10 years. And that's only books that we're reading and reviewing. Like that doesn't count extracurricular books or books that we're trying or books that we read and we're like, yeah, we probably don't want to do a podcast episode on that.
Hmm.
But literally 260 books, like we have the opportunity to do that. And I thought that was a great closing thing for me. And I'm thinking that you think the same way, is the real reason to do a podcast and to review books like this is so that we can become better people overall. You feel the same way?
I mean, to go back to what the book opened up with, what's the aim of life? And I know we talked about that with our goals episode. I brought that up because I was reading this book. The aim of life is self-development, to develop
Right.
yourself, to become a better person, and that's stoicism. It's totally focused on how can you become a better person. And going back to the beginning of the book again, it talks about what can we learn from the life of Montaigne, because it opened up about how Montaigne for like a decade all he did was read and he would read, and for 10 years he read, and then after that 10-year span he that's when he started writing. And Ryan Holiday was just alluding to the fact that it took Montaigne those 10 years to read and think and then write, and then that's how the impact he's had on everybody else. But the fact is that when he was in those 10 years, it wasn't just him reading; he was reading and writing to improve himself. And so he asked a question: what can we learn from the life of Montaigne? And it talked about uh, your education. I think you already alluded to it, like your education doesn't win. It goes back to his book, The Ego is the Enemy, where ego is the enemy of wisdom, and something about how conceit is like a parasite to like your self development. And then we've already talked about this as well, but always being curious, always asking questions, always being open, always being willing to learn. And then he finishes it. What can you learn from Montaigne? Is in order to in order to live, you need to learn, and everything pales in comparison to self awareness. And I think that you reading this book and me reading this book has touched every single one of those. Like learning that
Mm-hmm.
education doesn't end. We're responsible for our own learning. We do that by talking to the dead. You said your ego was what limited you from reading, and well, that's actually become the enemy of you growing in wisdom.
Right.
And then just always being curious, always questioning, always listening, and then we learn. And I thought that was kind of a powerful. I journaled about that one at the beginning of the year on that question alone. But going back to the real reason to write a book and the real reason to podcast is like it is to better ourselves. Um, Back in September, I was on a walk, and this is where I came up with the idea to write a book on education. And the phrase that I heard that kind of spurred the thought was the greatest gift that you can give mankind is to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, that's just all of the learnings that you've done over the course of your life. You put that into the book. And then I also added to that the greatest thing that I can leave Soren is a journal. And that's the greatest gift I can give him. Maybe, yes, I will leave him generational wealth, which is a goal. But maybe that journal would be more impactful than any of the money that I hope to leave him. And all that came through this and the book that we just read, and how that is now it's in our it's our own effort now of if we're going to pursue those things or not. So this book, man, I know you're probably gonna ask the question, how many stars does it get, or how many thumbs up
Yeah.
does it get? What do you give it?
So, well, something that I want to do with all the books that we read is thumbs up, thumbs down. Like, what do we rate it? And so, I mean, obviously, best would be two thumbs up. Good would be one thumb up. Like, I would say no thumbs, and you have one thumb down or two thumbs down. And I mean, are we going to do like halves where you can do like half a thumb up? You know, like so all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So,
Is that
I,
Gladiator
I,
style or that's
you're.
Gladiator style, right?
So, I came to this conversation with a one thumb up on this book just because I was a little more irked about his need to harp on Elon Musk. But after our discussion, I'm going to have to give it a little higher than a one thumb up because I think that if a person can get past the fact that Ryan Holiday is obviously obsessed with Elon Musk,
Hmm.
read around that. If you can read around that, I have not read any of other Ryan Holiday's works, but just hearing you talk, this is one of his best books. Reading around that one little obsession, it's literally one of his best works. So for that reason, I initially started with a one thumb up. I'm gonna have to give it one and a half. So I can't give it two complete thumbs up because I think there are other books that I've read that have been better. But I'm gonna go with one and a half. What would you give it?
I mean, I'm a Ryan Holiday fan, so I'm giving it two thumbs up. But it's funny. I the first 100 pages were amazing, like you said, and then
Yep.
you kind of go through his obsession and him whining about Elon Musk, and it didn't bother me, but it's just like I'm not learning from this particular example. I thought there was so many other examples that he could have used. So I was a
Yep.
little annoyed by that, not the fact that he was harping on Elon Musk because I have no emotional connection or political connection or political whatever to Elon Musk. Um, so that's probably, so if you like the first 100 pages, then the first three books are going to be, I think, hopefully two thumbs up for you.
Yep. And I'm looking forward to that. So the next book that we're gonna read is Make Your Bed. I should have the name of the author. It's Admiral something. And then we're going to go through Ryan Holiday's first three books: Obstacles Away, Ego is the Enemy, Stillness is the Key. And then after that, we're going to do Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, and then Never Finish by David Goggins as well. So that's kind of a lineup. If somebody's watching this and they want to read with us, then those are the books. I think we should hold our top five books for next time because we're already almost at an hour and 20 minutes, which I'm going to edit it down. So it'll be over an hour. I think maybe we do a special episode that's shorter, maybe like 30, 20 or 30 minutes.
Sure.
Put that out because the plan is to do these podcast episodes once every 2 weeks, which gives us enough time to read and go through some of these books.
Hmm.
And then we may have special episodes like so, but it won't be on a weekly basis, but every other week. So we'll see. But we'll hold off on that and then maybe do a special episode and slip that in sometime. Any
Perfect.
closing thoughts?
No, man, I think what we said was a lot. So I'm
It was a lot.
looking forward to reading again with you, man. It was a really good week. Just reading, writing, journaling, thinking. So I appreciate you challenging me and kind of going through this journey of reading together and kind of bouncing ideas and off of each other. And I know we're going to continue learning in that way.
It'll be good. So you can find us on social media, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X, all of the above at Two Bros Lit. Find us there. Until the next episode.